Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on robotic process automations. We have our world famous speaker, Professor David Smith, Professor David J. Kelly, and Mr. Adam. First, I would like to give chance Professor David Smith.
Sharif, thank you. Today is an interesting topic, one that is timely, but it's also one that the market is still trying to figure out and how to go forward with it. Robotic process automation is the process of automating business operations with the help of robots, with chatbots and other tools to reduce human intervention. So it's taking things that humans have traditionally done in the past in a business setting and beginning to automate them. Because let's just look at it a minute. The robotic side is it's entities that mimic human actions. Like I said, it could be a robot, it could be a chat box, or other AI-based tools that can mimic what we're doing. Process is a sequence of steps that lead to meaningful activity. For the example, putting together a contract to be signed and distributed. And automation is what it can be done without human intervention in this standpoint. And this one is really kind of fun as you begin to look at it. And it really is looking at how do you put together the set of steps to get it done and how you begin to do it. And let me just say a couple of things. RPA does not replace humans necessarily with actual robots. But there are software available in the market that lets you configure automation workflow to automate your business operation. And looking at the market numbers on that, it's going to continue to grow. There's not a lot of recent market forecasts on this one, but the robotics process automation market is expected to reach about $19.5 billion by 2027, which means it's growing about a 30% compound annual growth rate. And a lot of this is look at how these organizations are saving costs by doing things. COVID-19 accelerated the movement towards some of the APA type of applications because you had people not in offices, you had people not involved with doing a lot of it. And the marketplace itself is really going forward because when organizations adopt APA, they need to evaluate their readiness by looking at what is the full suite of their data management processes and data architecture. RPA, robot process automation, really depends very strongly on an organization having a really good data governance in place. And that data governance has to do it, and it really sets the guardrails for what the process automation can do and cannot do. And the real key to process automation going forward is that it needs to be learning. So there you begin to look at the differences there. The critical difference for robot process automation is it is process driven. Where you go back and look at some of the other AI tools and other things like that, they are data driven. So the robot process automation, particularly as you look at bots and things, they can only follow the process defined by the end user. Where some of the others, like some of the AI tools, they use machine learning and to handle it. They learn over time and they adapt over time. So those are a couple of the differences. But where we're seeing RPA going is we're seeing more and more RPA being powered by artificial intelligence. So we're going to see more self-learning and advancements in this coming almost every day as we speak. So, Sharif, that's an introduction for you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Mr. David? Yeah, yeah. I cannot see you. Anyway, we are discussing about robotics process automations and a lot of industrial experience. So, can you share some of your industrial views and industrial experience for our audience?
Well, I mean, when you talk about uh, robotics and process automation, I mean that's the bulk of what we've been doing in software engineering for the past 40 years at some level. Whether a lot of it's been business process automation, as specifically robotics, but with the emergence of IoT as a field and the availability of these other technologies, like the cloud and machine learning, especially, and the availability of computing power, we're really been able to do a lot more with that. Like with IoT, like for example, it's not. This is an example of business process automation, but like if I can, you can't really see. Uh, like I have this huge aquarium next to here, and this has a whole suite of electronic sensors and water chemistry automation and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, and this stuff has become easier and easier and easier. And what we're seeing right now is this kind of stuff applied to whether it's you know uh, warehouse automation or farm automation, or there's so much stuff, and I think one of the benefits of this kind of automation is that it frees up humans to do other stuff that um, more creative stuff that just technology is not as good at. And I think it's important that we use this automation to kind of free ourselves from the burdens to raise the standard of living across the board. And one of the benefits of that being we also it creates larger economies, and I mean there's just so many financial benefits of this kind of automation, especially as it spreads through various industries. That's kind of my high level view.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
One of my favorite topics. I think, I think in general, um, structure in people's lives uh, contributes in no small way to their quality of life and their sense of meaning. So, of course, having a job and not just any old job, but having a job helps to sustain foundations for that sense of meaning, structure. For me personally, for example, I have found that my creativity and motivation go up when I'm in employment. Thus, I am less so when not in employment, even though I have had more free time. So we want to be careful not to allow uh, whole demographics of people to just fall into despair because of automation. Um, so that those are the thoughts I'm thinking of this topic at the moment.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. As we discussing about the robotic process automations, so can you give us some comparison in between Asia and North American markets? How actually North American markets and their industrialization get involved with this kind of automation process, and what is the benefit?
Well, the involvement is becoming more and more, and I can tell you at my company, we use it in multiple of our portfolio companies to do different tasks. Uh, but we particularly use it as we look at some of the areas with our customer support, customer service, and others that are really beneficial for this. Uh, we do a couple of things with. Let me talk about the benefits first as we do this, and I think that might be a good place to start, and then come back and talk about the markets after that. Uh, and we can do it that way. The benefits of it's really pretty solid. One of the things it really does is it helps you leverage your human capital. And we know that today, with all the fallouts of getting people with the labor shortages, the human capital shortages, uh, that is one of the things that we need to do is look at better ways where we can leverage different elements for human capital. And we want to be careful as we do that. Um, the, the benefits of RPA itself is if you look at the majority of the software tools that are used to create RPAs, uh, they tend to not require developers to configure them. Many of them are drag and drop, and that is really good for people wanting to get into it and handle that forward. Um, and that RPA, because it reduces the workloads of teams and staff members, what it lets you do is begin to move staff to uh, functions that you need more of the human being part that are not as open to being applied into an RBA type of workflow. And it's really interesting since bots and chat bots can work around the clock and they can reduce wait time customer for customers. It actually leads you to higher customer satisfaction. In most instances, it leads to increased employee morale because you're taking the highly repetitive, high volume work off of the team and letting them focus on things that are more strategic, require more decision making. One of the RPA workflow models is interesting because I'm seeing it more and more in industry where compliance is important, and that type of compliance can be automated with this so that you're consistent. You're consistent every time you use it. And the other thing with robotic process automation is that it lets your other software systems stay in place and it begins to use parts of your infrastructure. It begins to pull the other elements in. And Sri, can you bring up that one graphic?
Yes.
And this is just a good little chart to see where a lot of the RPA is used today. It's used, like I said, a lot in customer service. That's where we primarily use it in our companies. It can be used in accounting, financial services. I see it used heavily when I'm going into financial services side of it, in human resources, supply chains management, and healthcare. And healthcare is one where we're beginning to see a tidal shift of how things were done. The old healthcare system was extremely manual, and we're seeing more and more not only of robotic process automation used in there, you're seeing enhanced capabilities for telehealth. You're seeing enhanced capabilities for different ways using Internet of Things, like David talked about, to begin to interact back with the RPAs so that you can begin to take a pulse rate and others from things and automate that and through the process or other types of simple diagnostics like that. But as you look at the application set, these six are the area where you're seeing the vast majority of RPA applied, but it can be moved beyond that as well. And increasingly, you're seeing some RPA that is also involved with what we were talking about yesterday with blockchain, because you're seeing that you want a record of what was done, and blockchain's also beginning to be deployed to this. And like I said earlier, you're seeing more and more artificial intelligence begin to be applied within the traditional robotic process automation. So, Sharif, I think that answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Professor David J. Kelly, like if you want to add something based on these slides, because he's describing something very excellent, which is necessary for our industrial service.
Well, I mean, this for talking about where automation could be applied or robotic automation could be applied, I think it's a good slide. Whether it's customer service or where you see like Salesforce and CRM tools and various kinds of automation, like you see in Amazon, which also includes accounting. Then there's financial services. I think there's a lot of process automation around the market in terms of stock trading and some of the robotics, process robotics. So a lot of times in software engineering, a bot isn't necessarily like a machine, physical machine, but something that runs in the background and does something that's a software program. And you see a lot of maturity there. Healthcare, human resources, supply chain management. I mean, there's you could just, each one of these is a massive topic on its own.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Adam?
Thank you, Sharif. So in my mind, technology has presented such a compelling conundrum because it is both a problem and a solution simultaneously in many spheres, in many avenues. I think internet addiction is a perfect example of this property. The internet is highly addictive. It is full of more knowledge, more novelty, more of information, more of everything than any one thing ever did before throughout history. And yet it also has endless knowledge and wisdom about what internet addiction actually is, the science behind it, the neurology, the psychology, the sociology of it, and resources about how to live with it and taking steps to remedy it and be free of it or get some kind of control over it. This is the great paradox of technology, and I hope that with more automation also comes more opportunities for new kinds of jobs. Maybe we will be have enough free time to for people to devote themselves to pursuits that weren't previously possible because there wasn't enough time and there was too much of certain duties that they had obligations for. This could be like exploration, discovery, research, and of course there'll be demand for skilled people needed to maintain them, fix them, help run them, and maybe this would foster a new creative evolution as well. People might be able to help cultivate more artistic and creative pursuits than ever before. Maybe automation could help foster a new kind of renaissance, enlightenment, flourishing in knowledge and science and art, and we'll maybe be able to explore science and art in that kind of almost Da Vincian way. But of course, we want to be careful not to allow too many people to kind of fall into like sloth and laziness or despair because they feel they are meaningless. Their lives are more meaningless because they might feel useless now, seeing what was once a skill that humans needed to do with their own two hands being done by a robot. Yeah, it's demoralizing, and it's certainly nothing new. It goes from hundreds of years back to the Luddites even, and I'm sure at some point in history, long before that, who knows? But if we can find new jobs for people and new avenues, then I think or automation could be a positive revolution in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. Yes, this is very interesting presentation. Besides that, I want to know more about uh, the research, like how the North American Research Center doing research on automations. What are the new things happening? What you want to share for our audience?
Well, uh, some of the new areas around RPA are really looking, like I said earlier, about how can you employ more type of AI into it? How can you begin to integrate it more with physical world where that is important for it with IoT type of application? One of them is really interesting in that traditionally robot process automation has been very script driven. It has a process that follows discretely. What we're seeing is with the advent of more conversational AI with avatars that can actually expand and self-learn and go across new unknown things that they haven't received before. That is one of the areas that we're seeing research going quite a bit forward on it. I'll give you an example that in one of our companies, just so it makes sense. A lot of times in education, where you're having a chat box interact with a student, there's a very defined script and it's answers like that. And for the audio part of that, and for the text part, all of it, those are pre-recorded responses, either the text or the audio. What we're seeing now is, like I said, a movement to conversational. So, for example, in one of our companies that has a 3D conversational avatar to teach social and emotional learning, it can respond to the student in their names. It can respond back to the student with the example the student is using, and it can personalize the responses more to the end user. And that's where a lot of this research is headed. And uh, as you see the metaverse come into place, you're going to see different types of robot process automation be adapted to be used in the metaverse space as well, as opposed to more of the bot chat box type of applications we see it in today.
Thank you. Professor David, we are actually working with the youth community to developing their skills. So you are expert as a software engineer. So what is your advice how the AI engineer can develop their skills, or if you have special advice for our audience?
Well, I think I've given this advice several times, but probably the most important thing is to do something. Do a project and learn the skills needed to do the project, whether it's, an IoT project, you're learning to program microcontrollers and pull data from sensors. And once you have the data, then learning how to use various ways of analyzing it and building machine learning systems that can actually respond to the data. And you there's a lot more than just this straight machine learning that's very popular. There's things like fuzzy logic and different things in the AI space you can use to make decisions dynamically, uh, whether it's water chemistry or farm automation or warehouse automation or mail processing, but actually doing the project yourself is, in my opinion, the best way to learn, as opposed to taking a class at some university and sitting and listening to a lecture on theory for the next 9 weeks.
Excellent. Professor mm, David Smith, Professor David J. Kelly sharing some information about developing projects. So, how our student can involve with this good projects? Even is there any process
There's
that they can collaborate
many
with North
opportunities
American?
for students can get involved. And some of them are actually in the education process itself. I know when I look around higher education and education, even at the lower level here in the United States, there are many tasks where you could apply this within it. I can tell you if I go during the day to check out a student to take them to a doctor's appointment, that process is all manual to me. And there's a place where this could be used to automate that process that happens many times a day. Uh, Things like going in and getting college records could be automated using RPA type of approaches to it. Uh, and around the communities, there's a lot of places where it's repetitive, boring work that students can reach out in their community. And these tools, in many cases, are open source uh, and can be used to have the student gain industry knowledge, uh, deployment and technology knowledge, and help local businesses there. Um, the I see more and more. I can tell you, I see all the time when for example, when I call into numbers, the wait times trying to even get a simple question answered that this could handle. Unfortunately, a person ran a stop sign and broadsided my car day before yesterday, and did quite a bit of damage to it. But just trying to interact with the insurance company, trying to get a claim number, trying to begin to get details back from them, trying to get information. It took 2 days really just to get to the first level, where most of that discussion and back and forth could have been done with robotic process automation. And that is the type of thing where it is very applicable to it. You know, if I, for example, go into my American Airlines account to look at flight status, that is done really through a robotic process automation system using their bots to begin to do that, whether I do it with text or by voice and voice recognition. Uh, that is places. But you can take those couple of examples, Sharif, and for your students, they can look around and see literally hundreds of places in your own community, their own community, where this can be applied. And like I said, in many instances, not at the scale of like an American Airlines, but in many instances, the tools to implement this are open source and can be accessed fairly easily.
Yes, great. Mr. Adam, are you with me?
Yes, can you hear me okay? I'm on my phone today.
Yes.
So earlier I touched upon the potential benefits and positive outcomes regarding today's topic. We could call that positive side of the argument the Star Trek scenario. Certainly by the next generation, they had jettisoned money and financially motivated employment in favor of exploration and self-improvement, continuous betterment, both collectively as a species and personally as individuals. I don't think we will abandon money, certainly not in mine or our lifetimes. We've still got the looming cashless experiment to get through first yet. So we must be mindful that automation doesn't continue to alienate the masses from like a corporate ruling class. Or automation and the roboticization of jobs and menial tasks is a massive time saver and is very efficient and thus very lucrative. The people who are at the top of these companies that use automation, they make more money than ever before. I mean, a good example is in supermarkets where customers are encouraged to use self-service checkouts instead of human servers and checkout people. They can get more people through these machines faster than when customers had to queue waiting for a customer in front of them to be served. And so yeah, the people who own these companies and corporations have an interest in investing. Automation is a good investment for them. For example, like with self-service checkouts, they can make more money quicker. But of course, I don't think money will disappear in this country. I think it will still be financial economies will stay with us for quite a while yet. So I think automation might be instrumental if we go down, if we're not careful enough, of creating like more of a communist state where the masses are ruled by these people at the top. So I think there's the positive and then there's the negative. I think so those are what I've got in my head at the moment.
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, one thing we have in mind this month, our economy forum, we have some operations in South Asia, especially South Asian country, they have heavily engagement in the world. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing most of what you're saying, but the
Hello?
last couple sentences were a little bit jumbled.
Nations, they have heavily involvement with developed nations for with their labor, actually with their labor and these kind of things. Example, Bangladesh, they have garments industry. So garments industries, they have a lot of cheap labors. So country like USA and Europe's and they actually produce their clothing and everything inside Bangladesh. But if this robotic process automation and this kind of things booming, and what do you think this labor market, country like Bangladesh, India, and Indonesia, they will lose job, or what the alternative strategy you can advise them?
Well, I mean, so you have a lot of different competing forces there in that sort of situation. If a government is on the extreme with dictatorships or that sort of thing, then it's not really in the best interest always to have the people as a whole become better educated with higher standards of living, because the transition from that to democracy is revolution, and it means they're going to lose power. So you have that dynamic. Then you also have industry where the lower my cost to produce a product, the more money I can make. And from a Western standpoint, it's in our best interest for these countries to have higher standards of living, because you end up with a more robust global market, and the more robust the global market is, the more money everyone can make. But to do that, you've got to raise the standard of living in these countries to bring them up to the same level as everyone else, so you have the largest possible economic base to work with. And my point being, there's a lot of competing forces in these countries. Like India is a great example, and I use that because I've actually been to India, and there's been a lot of put in terms of technological investment in terms of that high-end infrastructure, and the more that trickles down into manufacturing and into higher salaries, we slowly get bring up the standard of living in India, to the point where at some point it becomes viable for us to sell into those markets. But the other thing is by with process automation, you can start freeing up some of these labor forces. Now, as a standard of living goes up, it's more cost effective to do automation. You will have some job loss, but at the same time, over the long run, we have the opportunity to put these people in more creative jobs, things that people will enjoy and be more, and whatever it is. I mean, it's up to them, really. I think that people should do what they enjoy, and if you're trying to use process automation to do something, if then do it in the field you're most interested in. If you're kind of all over the map, that might be less important. Like me, I'm all over the map. You pick a topic and I could be interested in now, but my expertise is pretty narrow in deep, but in 6 fields or so. But most people, even that is difficult. You pick a field and you focus there, and that's how, if you're in those labor markets, with like say in India or Bangladesh or something, if you, while you're in there, also are learning some of these high-tech things to put yourself out of your own job so you can look at higher paying jobs, I think is kind of where the sweet spot is. And I think the important thing is to pick ones that you love to do, because you'll be good at it. If you're doing something you love, and it's not just one aspect you like, but you like the industry, you like doing process audit, you like programming, or IoT, or whatever it is. When you have a whole set of things that you enjoy, you're more likely to be successful. It'll make it easier to get new jobs and this kind of thing. So that's
Excellent.
Sharif, you look frozen.
Yep, I think he froze.
Adam, you want to go next?
Do you mind if I go next afterward?
Okay, I can.
Go ahead, David.
Say some things. The RPA systems are good, but there are case examples of where they've had failures. And one of them was an RPA of something called a robo-signer, and it was used in the mortgage industry. And what happened is you saw these systems rubber stamping foreclosure documents on homeowners and their mortgages, even when they did not talk with them, when there was chances for them to make the payments and work them out. But this is a place where the use of the RPA ended up leading to government regulation of the use of RPAs in that industry, and to a scandal that actually affected part of a housing bubble, because so many of these robo-signer foreclosure documents were put out. And it caused the industry to have to go back and manually reevaluate all of those that were done. And so this is
you're going to have issues like that in any new and emerging.
100%. But that was actually the part here, is that when you try to put in process a place for robotic process automation, it's not just taking the simplest path of the process you're automating, but it's looking at the nuances around the path. And is there points where, as you go through this process automation, should it be at points where you branch out to a human to do part of the review on this, as opposed to just following the simple rules in the robotic process automation? And this was a very interesting example that taught the industry a lot of lessons on how to begin to apply it and how to look at it. But there's some really key facts you've got to do when you start evaluating how to put a RPA in place. And one of them, it has to be easy to use. People won't use it if it's complicated, and you need to build and use bots, and they have to collect data that empowers you to serve your customer and to make decisions. one other thing is they have to be scalable. I've seen many places where people begin to use bots and chat boxes that as you begin to bring them to uh, operational status, they quickly become non-scalable. And you have to make sure it's scalable. They have to be reliable. And you have to have built-in monitoring with the analytics and uh, KRPs and other things like that, so you understand what it's doing. And there's a lot of ways to put them together, and you can put some together very fast. But with the example of the robot signers in the mortgage industry, you do have to test, and you have to test it with multiple scenarios to be good. And they really need to be smart. Uh, the best tools really support simple task-based activities. They can read and write from any data source, and are beginning to utilize advanced learning and machine learning and other technologies to improve future automations that you're going with that. So there's a lot of places to get started. There's a lot of places good. The marketplace for people who can support robotic process automation with different developers, recognition, image recognition, text, speech, analyzing unstructured data sets. All of these are areas where it's a pretty good career. So you've got software developers, engineers, you have product managers, business analysts, all coming together to work to support uh, robotic process automation within an enterprise. And you're seeing more and more consultants going in place to begin to work with the small and medium-sized businesses, which is actually probably some of the areas where you can get some of the biggest payback from implementing RPA systems in those marketplaces.
Thank you, Professor David Jekali. Very interesting discussions. So, can you share more about software industries? Uh, yes, regularly we do discuss about artificial intelligence and many interesting issues we have. But my issue is that,
Oh,
like, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, yep,
Okay,
I can hear.
yeah. So actually,
hello.
what, like, hello, Adam. Adam, you want to respond?
Sorry,
Hello,
I
Adam.
apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, take care. Actually, my question is that, like, when the academics, they're developing different software engineers, and yes, you shared that they have to develop different kind of projects and other things. But beside that, the Asia Pacific has different industries. How, let's say, World Talent Economy forums can help these industries, like this kind of traditional industries, to move with this automation process, this robotic process, and what are the benefit actually they have. Still, there are a lot of debate and argument, but what is the major benefit this kind of traditional organization, most of them actually small medium enterprise, they will get benefit, especially from this robotic process automation.
Well, a lot of times, the benefits can include lower labor costs, larger volume, being able to handle a lot of uh, these sort of business scenarios. The problem is in user adoption or business adoption. A lot of times, when the processes are so new and so radical, it's easier for entrepreneurs, including students and young adults, to build a new business using those processes and just put those other old businesses out of business. Sadly, that seems to be true, and that's not just like in Southeast Asia, but globally. That just seems to be human nature. Because these businesses run by the older generations a lot of times are less flexible, and it's one of the things I think that can benefit students and the kinds of things that the World Talent Economic Forum seems to be focused on is encouraging students to not just do projects, but also have an entrepreneurial mindset, because they're more likely to be successful with the projects they do, especially if they are around automating processes that can actually be made profitably. And what they'll end up doing is they'll enter the market and potentially put some of these businesses out of business. There's one particular business in the Philippines that is kind of a dying industry. I'm not going to name any names, because at least not all together in Washington State, or in the United States, but in Washington State specifically, their product is illegal. But it's one of my favorite products out of the Philippines, and they're the best in the world. But at this particular, and it's a lot of intense, craftsmanship that goes into it. But the problem is the businesses that do it in the Philippines are so old and so stuck in the 19th century that they struggle to compete with some of the automated companies that do the same thing in even China, Japan, and United States. And what I would love to see is, some students there figure out how to automate the process for the products coming out of the Philippines, because if they can match that quality at a lower cost point, not only they'll put those traditional businesses out of business, but they're already known as the best in the world ever. And it's a great opportunity for young kids there, or students. I mean, I say kids, I mean, 18 to 30 kind of range. It's a great opportunity in terms of a business that they could automate, that they could really excel and pick up, kind of this brand that they're known for in this particular very small segment. And I think those are the kinds of opportunities that people can pick up and run with. And when we encourage these kids with this to have these entrepreneurial mindsets, it's not so much they'll need to go out and find jobs, but they'll create the jobs, and they'll be growing the economies in those countries 10, 20 years from now.
Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. Yes, continuing on from some of my previous thoughts and points about the negative, the dark side, the downside to robotics, automation. One of my biggest worries will be the continued automation of surveillance and anti-privacy monitoring, automated espionage and sabotage, even terrorism and counter-terrorism and so forth, coupled with advanced methods for quickly identifying a person's weaknesses, who they are, what they're thinking, even in split seconds. An automated panopticon Big Brother system could potentially be unstoppable, even if the people operating and running it had flashes of conscience and remorse. They would be unable to escape themselves and would join the rest of the world's population, people and population, as the newest set of prisoners. But the Israeli scholar Yuval Harari has been in the news a bit with coverage of his talks and presentations about futurism and the implications of AI and robotics and automation in creating what he calls a global useless class. So he's become another seemingly controversial name, even though it might just have been misunderstood if he's simply warning against it rather than advocating and supporting it, as some have supposed. And what Professor David Kelly said earlier reminded me of the Japanese concept ikigai, which is a word people use in terms of like a job or a life's work or a life's task. Ikigai, so it's imagine a Venn diagram of what you do, what you love, what you're paid for, what is in demand, what people are happy to pay you for, what gives you pleasure, and it's in the middle of all those Venn diagrams overlaying each other. Robots so far can't feel or aspire or recognize ikigai in itself or in others, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage. So that loops back to the great paradox of technology, really being both one thing and another at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Markley. Can you hear me, Mr. Mark?
Hold on, I had to take care of something there, so everything, but definitely can hear you and all of that. But definitely one of the things I had to ask about robots is I was hearing about this chess person that went off the rails in terms of robots because there was a robot that injured a 7-year-old or some other kids. I might not have been exactly 7 while they were playing chess and all of that. So I guess one of the questions I've got for our folks as everything in that robotic space is if one of the jobs might not be robotic handlers, because even though I know there's been conversations around simian beings and robots having their own thoughts and their own processes and all of that, and being able to think for their own selves, it's kind of like that kids over at Sesame Place. If there are people that are not doing things correctly and all of that, then those robots may retaliate as well. So just like we had to have those handlers, and sometimes if you don't handle them correctly, they will come back. I'm thinking about like that great incident that happened with Siegfried and Roy with the Tigers. I imagine that maybe David Smith will agree with me that one of the jobs we might need is a job that helps how to deal with robots that might be rebellious. Because like everything, if you got those thoughts, you might have some rebellious ones also. But I don't know if David's got any thought about that as a career option in the robotic process and all along those lines.
Thank you. So, Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks for today's sessions?
Well, Mark, there's many things I would love to use robotic process automation on. And, in some ways we could do it in many different ways. In the broadcast media, we're actually beginning to see RPA used more and more, particularly with programs that have more call-in, using as a way to collect information from viewers, pulling that in different ways to do it, ways to push information out, and do it and have it be interactive and responsive. So that's one of the big. But you begin to look at it, and like I said earlier, you see RPA in many different industries. You see in banking, financial services, more and more and more in supply chain. Telecom actually was one of the early adopters of robotic process automation, from simple things within the telecom market to doing interactive response systems with, like what you interact with when you call into an airline and others. Insurance, like I said earlier, I really want to see RPA technology used more in insurance, because I'm still so frustrated just trying to interact with insurance companies after being broadsided day before yesterday. Retail, you're seeing a lot more. And particularly as you begin to look at where geography makes a difference, this type of robotic process automation can help it tailor responses back to people in the retail industry. And like I said before, healthcare is a huge one for it and can be used in a lot of places. We've all walked into a doctor's office and we're given a clipboard and all of this stuff. You could actually begin to automate part of that process using robotic process automation before you ever step foot into that waiting room. You can see a lot of applications going across it. But, there's a lot of companies doing it. One of the companies that actually has a very big practice in this area is IBM, or the big companies. You see Siemens putting it in place. You see other big companies. But like I said, it actually goes down to the fact that there's also a lot of open source software out there. And if I posted in the internal comments a link to a school, online school, that actually has a very simple course for somebody wanting to get started in it. The first 10 days of that one's free, and if you can't get through it that fast, then it's a low fee. But there's a lot of resources on how to be trained, how to put the things together. And as we spoke about earlier, it's not just limited to the developed countries. It's something that can be used really anywhere in the world today because we all have these repetitive tasks in every industry that has to get done. And robotic process automation is a great way to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, a couple of just quick points to follow up on Mark's comment. I think, absolutely, there'll be handlers, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, if do what you love, if in being a handler or doing, getting into the whole safety and security space or any other aspect that you're really interested in related to automation or process automation or robotic process automation. It's very wide. I mean, it's almost borderline. I mean, it's so vast. It's you'll see it all. And I think one point, I think maybe this will be my last point, is that my fear is that people will be afraid of these kinds of processes when mistakes are made. We're going to, as a civilization, we're going to make mistakes. People will get hurt. People will die. But that doesn't mean stop doing process automation, or stop doing, that's like medical science. What would have happened if, they did one test, someone died, and then we just stopped there, with 19th century medicine, mistakes will be made, right. Just let's do our best to fix it and work the problem and help everyone. Like I said, it's better for everyone. It's a standard of living is raised across the board. It'll be more opportunity for jobs, for businesses, for kids learning, and part of that is this robotic process automation. And I look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Adam, what's your concluding remarks?
Thank you, Sharif. Yeah, so this topics at my imagination a bit further into the future. In future scenario number one, people have been dumbed down a bit and dehumanized, that they have essentially become robots themselves, only they don't really know or notice because it's what they know, and they don't know any different. Only those at the very top notice. They wanted to absolve themselves of the guilt of replacing millions of human workers with robots by slowly turning humans into robots by putting lead and fluoride and other such things in the water supply and such. I'm spitting tongue in cheek, but or scenario two, which I think is much more positive, where consciousness can eventually be uploaded into machine substrate, and then when the whole planet becomes one big network, one big device, what happens then? Can the consciousnesses of millions of people be uploaded into this one big network? Will we still maintain individuality, or will we all merge together? Would that be a good thing? Is it something that's kind of like inevitable on the evolutionary ladder, that we all merge together and send ourselves or split ourselves again, send ourselves to different regions of space? As David Kelly said, I look forward to seeing you all in this environment and maybe merging minds with you all. It might happen just like that. We'll see. Thank you. Good topic.
Thank you. Mr. Markley, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, great topic as always, Sharif. I was actually just visualizing and thinking about how long we've been talking about this whole notion of robots, and who knows, maybe eventually even though it was something that came around in people's ideas in a cartoon character that was actually created pretty much the same year that I was born. I mean, in 1962. And definitely David will know what I'm alluding to, but we all remember the Jetsons where we were wanting that flying car. And of course, we also wanted our own personal robot. I'm looking at my apartment going like, I could use a Rosie right about now, but at some point I'll have to tackle this mess myself since I don't have Rosie here with me. So I could use either a Rosie or an R2D2 type of robot, which is a more advanced one from kind of the Star Wars, Star Trek family of science fiction. But yeah, I'm sitting there going to myself, and I'm sure many people, including some of the students, because I've got a couple of students near me that are studying, going like, I could use Rosie to help me study and all of that. So definitely it may be a point in time where we don't just have our personal computers, which is kind of like having Rosie, but we have an actual Rosie, the robot, there in the space with us. I think that it's a little bit too cost prohibitive for many people right now, but who knows, that might be another 5 or 10 years from now and all along those lines. I mean, we do have, as David Kelly said, that Roomba robot that can do a little bit of the vacuuming, but it's not the same as Rosie. Rosie had a personality and all along those lines. So definitely need a little bit of that Rosie robot and all in that space. So that is my concluding remark. And definitely if anybody's got one and they want to ship it to me, I'll take the drone delivery today.
Thank you. Thank you. This is actually excellent discussions, and I believe our audience really enjoyed today's discussions. We just finish our 599 episode. Tomorrow will be our 600 episode, and I just want to share some good news. Next month, World Talent Economy Forum, definitely me, we are shifting in South Asia because of huge collaborations from South Asia, like IITs and the different government agencies, energy ministries with 55,000 people, many largest universities in South Asia. They are actually supporting our projects. And yes, when I come to Malaysia 6 7 years before, I committed that I will do something for Malaysia. Yes, now we have 3,500 students. Definitely everyone actually knowledge worker, what we discussed today. Uh, and I'm sure in South Asia, maybe millions of people actually waiting for us. And definitely that is our objective. We will develop a knowledge oriented society. Maybe when I go, maybe we do not have electricity properly, maybe we do not have proper internets, maybe we have huge traffic problem, lot of challenges we have to face in the real world. But I believe with the help of all of the developed nations people, we can do excellent projects in developing nation for my grassroots level people. And especially that next year March we have one of the largest conference, Nikola Tesla Technology Conference, and where actually 25,000 scientists from around the world, they actually support. This coming 2 week we have very very special day because Japan I University with their president, they are coming, Singapore, the government agencies, and many high level uh, 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 decision maker, they are also collaborating with us. I can ensure the World Talent Economy Forum will work for grassroots level people, and definitely we want to develop more knowledge worker like Mr. David Kelly, like Mr. David Smith, like Mr. Mark Lees, and all of the things. And we need more of your support. I'm sure, I don't know now actually, many people think success based on money and everything, but we definitely want to contribute for people. And let's enjoy our 600 episode tomorrow. I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government agencies, with your corporation, and with your academy. And that World Talent Economy Forum going for the real operation. This is not the dialogue. This is more in action, strategic actions we are taking. We love to visit Africa, Middle East, South Asia, and definitely we want to launch something in North America as well. So we need all of our collaborations. I don't know those who contributing for our World Talent Economy Forum, how popularity and everything you get, but that's for I'm sure you will be part of history through our talent economy. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.